What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Baseball Development Hub podcast. My name is Trevor Powers, and I am joined, as always, by co-host Dan Galati. Dan, it's the first Scorcher of the summer. I know we have plenty in store, but this is the first weekend where it's getting hot. How are you, Noah, and Sarah doing with the heat down there? Getting some time outside still?
Yeah, I spent a lot of the day outside yesterday morning. I should say. I love this time of year. I love this weather. I love hot. Everyone looks at me like I'm crazy. I don't like dry heat either. I like humidity. I love this time of year. Just everything. When you walk outside and it's already warm. I was out of the house at 5 in the morning this morning, and it felt fantastic. So it's my favorite time. Got to be a little careful with Noah. He did all right yesterday. Sarah doesn't handle heat at all, which is funny. We're not moving north, so she's gonna have to deal with it. She'll have to get over it, but she does not, unless she can be she needs shade or water nearby, which is fine. We can make that happen, but she does not handle the heat very well.
I'm laughing because you say that because shaded water is exactly what we need for Brady nearby. And it's so funny to hear you say that about your wife. It's comparable to us having to be conscious about what we do with our dog in the summertime. But completely fair. I was outside. We were working on some railings, and then this morning I took Brady for a walk, and I walked outside and I was like, oh, it's starting to become a North Carolina summer. I will say 5 a.m. and like 10 p.m. is when that like heat, it hits perfect. Like driving with
Yeah.
the windows down, whether you're going up at 5 in the morning or coming back late at night, that warm air feels so good. But obviously we're not going to spend all time talking about weather. We're not Mike Trout. We're not intrigued by those things the same way that he is. Great weekend of college baseball so far. We're recording this on Sunday morning. Our friends at West Virginia clinched a trip to Omaha. That's a program that has been on a meteoric rise over the last few years. And then obviously when Coach Mazzy stepped away, Coach Sabins, who we have a ton of admiration and respect for, steps in back-to-back super regionals, if I'm not mistaken, hosting this year, hosting a super regional, making it to Omaha in his second year as a head coach. So excited for that group up there. And then obviously Georgia and Mississippi State played the best game probably in college baseball this season, at least, maybe even over the last couple years. Back and forth tilt with Mississippi State finishing with Michael O'Shaughnessy hitting his second home run of the day in replacement for Tre Phelps. And we're not going to have a conversation about Tre Phelps' celebration around the bases and what that is for college baseball. It's not the domain we want to touch in, but we did want to kind of extend that congratulations to our good friends who have been hospitable to us and excitement about the Omaha trips for the Mountaineers and the hopeful Omaha trip for the Dogs down in Athens, Georgia.
Why do the umpires have to insert themselves? Sorry, whatever. The punishment, like it's different when you get a 15. I don't know. No one will know what Tre Phelps said. I didn't have a problem with it. Anyway, it's a 15-yard penalty for excessive celebration in football. That's fine. You move the kick up, you give him better field position, whatever. You're throwing a kid out and suspending, whatever. Anyway, it's just so
Yeah,
ludicrous that's
let me
the
kind of
punishment.
so that's what I think makes it tough, right? Basketball, you have a tech, right? Football, you have a flag. There's so many different things. Like, what is a penalty in baseball? A strike,
I
an
don't know. I
out?
don't know,
Like,
but
there
like,
is nothing that you can really do. That like the only threshold. That's why ejections are so common in baseball, but they're not like in other sports. Is because you can punish in a way that is like a true penalty, right? And I think that we've talked about this to a certain extent. The celebrations have gotten, let's just say, out of hand, right? And that's what college baseball is. If you go to a Division III game on March 17th on a Saturday, it's rah rah, who can show up the other team's dugout more. But I think what's get lost is when you take all that into a regional and the intensity that is in a regional and a big home run. I don't want to strip that away from because that's what makes baseball, college baseball, enjoyable, is that it's not a sterile environment. These guys don't act like they've done it before because there's excitement. The fans are going crazy. The hill in right field in Athens and all the other places, West Virginia singing country roads as a community, right? Like that doesn't, I mean, it happens in postseason baseball, but like it just doesn't happen as frequently in professional baseball because it's such a long season, right? college baseball, there is an entertainment factor to these things. So I don't want to strip that away in those moments. And again, I hate to just be the one that's like, tell the umpires to have a feel. Like, that's a big home run. So I get all of it.
And like yeah, I don't ever love turning towards the other dugout. Now, whether his family was up there, and like
They were
I'm
up
not
there.
getting and
Confirmed that they were up there.
100%. But I'm not going to get into whether it was to the family, to the whatever. That doesn't matter. Like, can we at least just fine? Because I agree, there's no penalty in baseball. Like, they just get rid of the suspension for
Yeah,
excessive.
the
Like, can we call it a
suspensions.
successive celebration ejection? And like, okay, you're done for the game.
Yeah.
But like, yo, now you're suspended for the first game of a super regional, or what would have been a game 5 of the like what? That's
Yes.
for an excessive celebration. He didn't do anything like it wasn't that It wasn't that bad of a
Mm-mm.
thing. Like to me, you suspend someone. Like you think about suspensions in other sports, right? Like in hockey, you're getting suspended if you're being dangerous out there and like
Yeah.
you're seriously risking injury. But he was feelings. The only thing
Yeah.
he could have hurt in that setting was feelings. So like the fact that you suspend the kid is like, what do we? That makes it like I don't know. That's when people get on the umpires because like again, because it's like to me, it's just like again, I don't. I've never been a fan of like just keep it in your dugout, and I'm fine with most things. Like keep it in your dugout, and it's fine because to me, it's like it's not about the other team. It's not about the other guys. You don't have to do that. But like, so if you want to throw him out because he turned towards the other dugout and then gestured towards the first baseman because first baseman was chirping him, like okay, throw him out. But then to suspend him, that's where to me it's like this is ridiculous.
Yeah, the NCAA hasn't changed the rule, right? The NCAA, since we played, is get ejected, suspend 1 game for a player, no suspension for coach, right? Like coach gets ejected, they can bounce back and come back, and that's across any form of an ejection, right? Like whatever the
Except
umpire
assistant
deems as.
coaches.
Yes, well, if the umpire deems an ejection for a player, it's 1 game suspension. It's always been that way. And so it's interesting. You're probably right that there needs to be something put in place that's like an excessive celebration ejection. If that's the punishment we want to have, because there is no other form of punishment that we can give to the other team, we can't, even adding a strike to the next hitter is like, well, we just hit a bomb, who cares, right? Like we're like, and that's punishing the hitter, the next hitter, even though it's punishing the team, is an interesting conversation that I think the NCAA probably needs to have, because you're right. Like, I think that's where people have something wrong with it. And again, like, I think both can be true on this situation. I was lucky enough to go down to Athens and spend some time with Tre. I almost spoke out on social media during this whole incident because there's really bad people like the Jeff Fries of the world that decided to speak about somebody's character that they
Without
know
knowing them.
nothing about, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we don't embrace enough as a baseball community is people's personalities, right? In other sports, we're allowed to have personalities. We're allowed to showcase those personalities. We're allowed to have confidence. Shocker. But in baseball, we're afraid of people with confidence and bravado. And when I say that, the second I got into a room with Tre and was able to start to get to know him again, not intimately as a person or a friend, and we didn't spend all day together, but in the hour that we were able to spend together, like that is one of the most genuine and just good-hearted people that just goes about these things in a competitive nature with a little bit more confidence and bravado than people are comfortable with in the baseball space, right? And a lot of people build that reputation around him based on what happens between the white lines. And the person that I met, again, little things, showed up 30 minutes early and was talking to me about camera equipment, what we do at backside ground balls, asking me questions about me. He doesn't owe me anything, any time. He owes me the time that he agreed to interview and to be with me in that setting on camera, and he could have walked away from there. We talked about ABS coming for the SEC tournament. We talked about the team this year. We talked about their pitching staff. We talked about their young guys. We talked about coach. Like, when I say we spent 45 minutes talking about things off record that were just genuine, good-hearted human nature talk, that's the Tre Phelps that I learned in that moment. So when I saw him do that again, I've seen him show confidence and bravado in a game. I'm like, that's just genuinely who he is and how he portrays himself on the baseball field and what makes him the successful baseball player that he is. So I ended up not obviously saying anything. I called you right away, right when I left, and I was like, Tre Phelps is one of the best humans I've ever been around. Like, that was an unbelievable experience. I said the same thing to Coach Johnson after I got to spend some time with him, and Coach Johnson was very adamant about, kind of exactly what we saw unfold post regionals. The things people say about Tre, the things people believe about Tre is not accurate to the human being that he is. And it was disappointing to see the baseball community rally and just the old school baseball community that continues to just make these 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, figureheads for negativity in our sport and how horrible it is in this sport and everything that comes with that. So I was really disappointed about that. But again, I think sometimes we just need to realize, like, some guys have like a competitive switch that flips in their head, and it comes out in different ways. It comes out in ways that shows a little bit more emotion in those moments, and that's okay. Like, we just need to start being able to accept that about players. And again, we don't need to spend too much time. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts. Again, I just wanted to kind of take that time. I hadn't had an opportunity to talk about Tre since I was down there in Athens and got to know him a little bit, but I just can't. I couldn't stand on the table enough for the human being that he is, let alone the baseball player.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, obviously, and I trust your read on people. So obviously, I feel defensive to him as well, and I just thought that the rule was ridiculous. So I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm exhausted by the back and forth of that conversation that you're getting into, of like we just attack people without anyway. And there's certain players who can do things, and it's cool, Bryce Harper. But when other guys do it, I'm exhausted by the conversation. Like it's so what you said about Tre, a genuinely good human being, and how welcome he was to you. I'm gonna then take that to just real quick. Yeah, Coach Steve Sabins at West Virginia is, I mean, one of my favorite people we've come across. And we've come across great people, and everyone who's welcomed us in and opened their doors to us has been unbelievable on these campuses that we've gone to. And I couldn't thank them enough. And we haven't had any bad experiences because everyone's genuinely brought us in. But there was a different level of the connection. I don't know what it was. Maybe just me and him get along. You've mentioned that we look alike a little bit. So maybe it's
Sound
that
alike.
For me. Sound alike, whatever you said. It sounded like,
Both.
look alike.
It's both.
But Steve Sabins, I couldn't be, and we left there so impressed by him, so impressed by what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve. And you say it all the time that people make programs, right? And like when you left there, you felt so good about West Virginia baseball because of who he is and what they're doing, what they're about, the connection they feel to that state, being the flagship university in that state, what it means to the fan base, the community. He got all that and was just so impressive. And then you talk to him about X's and O's and understanding, and you see some of the things that he's done, coaching wise. And like, I'm so happy for that program. I'm so happy for that school. I'm so happy for him, the guys on that team. Yeah, he's been one of my, I mean, I've said it since we left. I've just like, I can't say enough good things. I know some alumni from the university, some huge fans, and I told them literally the day we left, like, oh, that program's in great hands. Like they have not even come close to reaching what they're going to, and he paid me back and made me look really smart to those people who have all been texting me this weekend, like in a year's time. And I was just like, yeah, like you could see it coming, just from being around him for a day. He was incredible to us. We're best friends. I don't know if he knows it or not, but I consider, when people ask me who my best friend is, I say it's him, because that's how big of a fan and how much fun I had that day, spending the day with him, talking about that program and that school, and just, he showed us, like you said, off camera stuff. Like, you can tell when people flip a switch. Some of the ones we've been around, and not saying that in a negative light, even sometimes, like you can just tell they're different when they're on and when they're off. And just their conversations with us. That is who he is. Like what you see in that interview is as genuine and as who he is as you could be, and just like he's awesome, and I couldn't be more happy for them. And I hope they go on a nice little run in Omaha and they continue to have some fun and bring a lot of pride to that fan base and that university.
There's not many people that cause me to stop what I'm doing when I see a clip or see an interview in game, if I'm just scrolling through the channels, or get excited to hear them speak. And Steve Sabins is one of them. right? Like genuinely one of those people that if I see a social media clip of him post game press conference, midweek, availability, whatever it is, it's like I have to stop and listen to him because, like you said, I grew to respect that him and that program and everybody involved in that program that we interacted with that day that we were there. And it was largely, again, we talk about the culture building aspect of being able to be the person that runs a program of that extent and like admiration. And then like I think we talked about last week, why are there so many upsets in regional? I don't think all the guys at the top are X's and O's, like obsessed with the ball coach, be able to coach small ball, be able to coach slug, be able to do defensive positioning, bunt coverages, play the short game. I think he might be the best in the country at that, like
Oh,
genuinely. And,
he's
and you want to know why this team can make decisions and remove talented players from their roster and rally and bring the core of the group together to be better than the sum of its parts. And that's why, right, is because I think they do a great job in development and preparation and then obviously in-game execution. And I think it starts at the top. And I could sing their praises till we're blue in the face. We could spend an hour talking about it. It would probably get weird if we went any more than like 17 minutes and 30 seconds into this podcast. It would probably get a little bit fandom. But I think that they know our admiration and respect up there. And I think it's so cool that the world and the baseball world is getting to see that firsthand because we went up there, and this will be the last thing, and then we'll get into our conversation today. We went up there after one season
hmm
of him being a head coach.
hmm
One season. And you could say technically that could have been bleed over from the previous regime. And there's other coaches that had a lot of success in their first season. Coach Small, a ton of coaches across the country that kind of take over a historic program and it's in good hands and they're able to execute on one season. We walked away from there saying like, no, 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 no. Like
they're gonna get
this is
better.
this is going to get better. This is the next hot name head coach. If I was an SEC program or a big money program, that would be my first phone call every time. Like he is on the top of people. Again, when we talk about coach rankings, it's who would you hire? No question. He's number one, at least in the people we've interacted with. And so this comes as no surprise to me.
No, no surprise at all. And I'm just happy that they're doing the thing, and it's going to be an incredible experience. I mean, I'm so happy, first time in program history that they get to go compete at that level, and it's really cool. There's something about the if I obviously lived in the state of West Virginia for 3 years, and I said it to you when we were heading up there. Like, there's just something about it. There's something about it. Like you get into that state, and it's a feeling, and I think if you haven't spent a lot of time there you don't understand it, and that's what makes that community so close. And even people who spent time in West Virginia, lived there, whatever, but didn't go to the university as an alum, whatever, didn't live in Morgantown, like still feel a connection to that school and those programs because it is the flagship school in the state. And no offense to Marshall, obviously, but like it's a cool place, and to see the country roads thing, like it's awesome. It's really cool, and it's like something that again, a lot of people don't understand it, and they think it's weird, or they make fun of it. But like when you have experienced it, and again, I lived there for 3 years. It wasn't like I grew up there or anything, but you still like there's something about the state, and I'm just so happy for them and him specifically because he was so good to us.
Yeah, we'll have to reach out after the season and extend our gratitude. And again, I always tell them, whenever I talk to anybody up there, it's like, yeah, well, Steve Sabins is our favorite head coach, even if he doesn't know that, like he even knows we exist anymore or not. So I always make sure that they know that. So they know we're huge fans down here and talking about that. So Dan, I know obviously we wanted to hit on a couple of those programs because obviously it's near and dear to some of the off-season stuff that we've been able to do and the experiences that we've had. So we're always rooting for them, but we obviously want to hit on something from a player development perspective. And, we're about at the quarter point of the Major League Baseball season. And one of the things is, we kind of have a pretty large sample size on some of these guys, whether it's first year players coming into professional baseball and starting to get an identity of what they are, whether it was a hot April, slower May, and we're starting to get a little bit in between of where they're going to steady, or guys that have just solidified themselves as the best pitcher in baseball and kind of came out of nowhere, which I know is kind of where you wanted to start it here, is talking a little bit about Cristopher Sanchez and what's made him so successful, not giving up a run in the month of May.
Yeah, unbelievable, right? And the NL Cy Young race is shaping up to be just an absolutely incredible. Yeah, it's going to be so fun the rest of the summer if you're into that kind of thing. If you like good pitching, like Sanchez, obviously, Mizorowski, what he's doing is absolutely ridiculous. He hit the 100K mark at 64 innings this year. He gave up 1 run in the month of May, so he lost out on pitcher of the month, which is like, you go 6 starts and give up 1 run. Usually it's like, oh, you're obvious pitcher of the month, but there was just Cristopher Sanchez was going scoreless. Ohtani, obviously, unbelievable this year. Paul Skeens, like, I know he had a 3 ERA and everyone was like clutching their pearls, which tells you how good he is. Chase Burns has burst on the scene for the Reds. Like, if you look at that kind of group right there, the NL side, Kyle Henderson's been very good. Doesn't quite have the innings of those other guys yet, but yes, Kyle Henderson's been absolutely wonderful. Which, geez, Red Sox. Anyway, yeah, you traded Rafael Devers and all the guys that you got from are now gone. Anyway, but so it's been ridiculous. But what Sanchez did, talking about him and just his climb, obviously as a Phillies fan, I've watched when it was kind of like a one-off off-season trade. They traded Curtis Mead, who was a well-regarded offensive prospect for the Phillies, and they got Cristopher Sanchez. And at the time, he was a guy that the Rays kind of felt like they had a ton of, right? He was a hard thrower who couldn't command it great. And he, like, such a credit to him, because he's one of those things, if you followed him and kind of know him as a Phillies fan, or what his journey was like, to reinvent yourself and turn into this guy who is a front runner for the Cy Young and just absolutely unbelievable is really cool, because he, hard thrower that didn't throw strikes, and then he kind of, I think it was in AAA, figured out that, like, I need to be able to command the ball, and so he started playing the target game every time he played catch play, and like that's a huge part of his process. Is he's constantly like just focused on hitting spots every day in catch play. It's the most important thing. He started taking care of his body better. He happened to marry a private chef who's now his private chef. She doesn't have to work anymore, and like cleaned up his diet. So like he had a problem keeping weight on. Now he pitches at a weight, like just all these things. So then he could add the velocity back once he figured out the command piece, and he's turned into this. And we had a long conversation a month ago or so on here about guys using multiple fastballs, and this is a guy who's dominating baseball with 3 pitches. And just to kind of summarize what he did in May, you said scoreless, but he goes 15 2/3 scoreless innings from April 30th to June. What was his start the other day? The Thursday, so the 4th. 15 2/3 scoreless innings, which is absolutely insane. And he was actually an out away. He had two out hits, or he would have extended it to 51 2/3. That's 5th all time in baseball. It's the longest streak by a lefty. It's obviously the longest streak in Phillies history. He has the longest streak in Citizens Bank Park history. Like, he was just, these records he's setting are just dominance, and doing it with 3 pitches in an era where we talk about how guys need to have multiple fastballs, and you're seeing so many 5 and 6 pitch pitchers kind of dominate, and the changeup is that good. And the evolution of his slider has certainly helped this year, and kind of, been able to add on to what he did in kind of 24 and 25 when he really started to break out. And I think the angle that he comes at you with, the fact he's so tall, Mark DeRosa, unbelievable on MLB Network after his start in San Diego a couple weeks ago, talking about how, and I love the way he phrased this, like he makes the plate bigger because of how he pitches, because he can come inside with 97, a sinker in at 97 to right-handed hitters. They now have to guard in on that, and then when he throws the changeup away, it just appears as a strike the whole way, and he's now made the plate bigger. So it's like he's working with more than 17 inches because he can get strikes in, out. And it's cool because in an era of like backspin and just crazy stuff and like pitching to the top of the zone, he just peppers the bottom of the zone. He's in, out. He has such a good changeup. Like the swing and misses that he generates, the batting average against on the changeup is absolutely ridiculous. It's incredible. It's a joy to watch. And like, if you're not a Phillies fan, you haven't, locked into one of the starts, just like take the time to do it once. If he keeps throwing like this, I would have to imagine the games in Philly, he'll start the All-Star game, which will be really cool for him. Um, but it's just been fascinating the way he can work both sides of the plate, and get glove side, and the way the changeup, he throws it off two seams, the way it looks just like his sinker, um, is ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. Um, and then he needed, anybody who can throw the changeup to same sided are guys that, like that's an elite pitch, because it's just, typically it's something you're using as a weapon against opposite handed hitters, and he carves up lefties with it. And the way he does it is he's gonna rush you with 97 in and get you thinking that you got to get, out in front of it and get early. And then here comes a changeup that he'll throw, low and into you that looks just like the sinker off of it. And you're gearing up because you think it's 97 coming in towards your hands, falls off the table, ends up out of the zone, and you're an hour and a half early for it. It's really cool to watch.
So it's interesting that you bring this up, because I had thought of something last year at the beginning of the season. Devin Williams struggled to get as much swing and miss with his changeup as he had in previous years. And one of the things that I always found interesting, especially as we talk about pitching development, is you would think, right, hypothetically, that in a vacuum, a guy like Cristopher Sanchez should throw his changeup every pitch, right? It's that good. It's that effective. It generates that much swing and miss. Guys can't seem to see it. But what we had kind of learned with Devin Williams early is he increased his changeup usage above his four-seam fastball for the first time in his career, and his changeup became less effective. Well, the reason why is because it's a pitch that really wasn't in the strike zone. And I think Cristopher Sanchez commands his changeup a little bit better, that he can throw it for strikes. He can throw it out of the strike zone, all of those things. Then Devin Williams kind of has more of that just power, split finger-esque changeup that he throws that dives out of the strike zone, and he has a hard time throwing it for strikes. But I think that's what's really interesting is you look at the last 3 years of Cristopher Sanchez's pitch percentages, it's identical, right? He's really gotten into a kind of a groove here where he knows how valuable the changeup is. The Phillies aren't a, non-forward facing pitching development organization. So they know how valuable the changeup is, but they've been able to own his identity, as I said to you off air before we got started, and say, hey, that sinker is really important just to set up the effectiveness of the changeup and be able to get those swings out of the strike zone and get those soft contacts early in counts and be able to keep hitters off balance. And just being able, that's what allows you to do it with three pitches, right? At the end of the day, the ability to do it with three pitches is they all have to work in tandem off of each other at an elite rate, right? Like you said, the step forward with the slider is super beneficial, and it gives him another weapon, obviously, to use. But it's that sinker and changeup that sets him up. It's where predominantly he uses his pitches, and they work so good off each other. And it really, elite changeup pitchers comes off of fastball command. I mean, we learned that
100%.
when we were 9 years old, right?
Yeah.
It was like, if you want to throw a good changeup, you better be able to command your fastball. And it's like, that's kind of like way, way old school pitching philosophy. But that's what Sanchez does so well, is just being able to bait guys in with the command and then be able to, keep them on the pirate ship, as I say, inside, outside, hard in, soft away. Like all of those cliches of pitching. And he's just, watching him throw is like video game-esque. Like,
Hmm.
it's like, where he's going to put a pitch. He always puts it in the area. It's fast. He works fast. Guys are swinging typically. They're not making contact. He doesn't get into deep counts ever. It feels like it's always 1-2 ground out, 1-2 strikeout, 0-0 ground out. Like it's just nonstop, like repetitive right at you. And it's really an enjoyable version of pitching that I think so many people, us including, like, it's just like older school of like, man, that's what you fall in love with. It's just a fast paced game of a guy who dominates the strike zone and can just really make it fun to watch.
Yeah, like 60% ground ball rate is absolutely, it's bonkers. And it's because he can, one, it's a power sinker, and then the changeup off of it. So he's getting so many like one-handed swings, top swings. And a guy, it's an elite pitch. Like you don't think teams know it's coming at this point, right? The reason we see so many pitchers with 6 pitches now is because we have so much information and everybody knows your pitch usage when you go into a game. Everybody knows what counts you like to throw what. So you have to start, guys have started to add more pitches so that they can, keep guys guessing and surprise guys, and like, if you watch enough baseball and like every home announcing, every announcing crew we have in the game is like shocked because you're seeing so many like 2-0, 3-1 sliders. And you're like, wow, you don't get the fastball anymore in that count. It's like, yeah, there's no true, like maybe 3-0, but even so now that we're throwing multi fastballs, it's like, okay, well, am I getting a four seamer or a cutter or a sinker? And to have a pitch that people know it's coming, like if I'm 1-2 against Cristopher Sanchez and I'm right-handed and he just busted me in with a sinker, he's probably throwing me a changeup and you're still getting guys waving through it. Like, it's just so impressive. And again, like the angle of which it comes at you, he's 6'6", so it's long, it creates just an uncomfortability. And then again, like the important thing off of it is like the fact that he's throwing it off of the fastball, like the spin, when you're creating the same spin with that pitch as your changeup, like that's when it's game over and you can just throw it and throw it. And that's what the elite guys have done. Trevor Hoffman, think of the great changeup pitchers in the game. I mean, Pedro had the unbelievable one. Like when you can get that spin to look like your fastball, and it's just like it's so fun. I love watching. I've always been a fan of guys with great changeups because those swings and misses when guys are that far out in front on a pitch that just dips under the barrel like that, it's so, for some reason to me, just visually, it's so satisfying. And those guys have always been like my favorite arms.
When you can combine elite ground ball rates with elite swing and miss, you're kind of unbeatable, right? Like, because we talk about it, like we talked about it last week, like homers win in the postseason. Like you need the 3-run bomb, or whenever we talked about offensive identity and the Braves and Brewers. Go face Cristopher Sanchez and congrats with your, Punch and Judy lineup that makes a ton of contact, because guess what? Your contact's going to be on the ground right at infielders. Like that is what Cristopher Sanchez is able to do. And he still has elite enough stuff. Like those are the true unicorns. Like we see guys like even Mizorowski. I'm not looking at his data right now, but because of the fastball shape, I would assume there's definitely some homer tendencies if guys can catch up to it, right? Garrett Cole, we saw, especially since he's come over to the Yankees, like he'll get got by a home run every so often because of the fastball shape. When you're able to do what Cristopher Sanchez does, where you keep the ball on the ground and generate elite levels of swing and miss, like that is the perfect recipe for what everybody would want in a high level starting pitcher, because there's nothing offenses can do. Even though he's 17th percentile on hard hit rate, guys still don't get hits because ground balls are outs. And if they're hits, they're singles. Like you are just limiting so much damage as Cristopher Sanchez and keeping the ball in the ballpark in a hitter friendly park, especially as the month and weather turns in Philly. There's no stopping him. And again, the beauty of the changeup is like kind of what we talked about. Even though he does throw an average 95 miles per hour and he does have some velocity behind it, a sinker, changeup, slider kind of repertoire, that's 3 to 5 years of sustainability right there. As long as he can maintain command, those pitches are always going to work. And as long as he can keep the ball on the ground, there's no reason. Again, like Wheeler has been so good for the last, 6-7 years. And it's just like, hand the ball off to your next 7 years of your ace. Like he's right there. And like he's one of the best pitchers in the sport. And it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, and that's why, like, it just from like a 10,000-foot view of that team, like that's why they still feel good about where they are. Like they had a horrible start; they're 15 or whatever games over since they were 9-19. But like, yeah, you understand why. Like, okay, if they get into a wild card series, you have to face Sanchez and Wheeler in a best of 3. Like, and right now that those two are pitching back to back in the rotation, and when they line up in the same series, it's like they win the series
every time.
Like it's like
every time.
And then, what happens like it did this week is like, well, if they win the game that isn't started by them in that series, and it's a sweep. Because it's like they're just going out there and like 21 outs, 2 runs or less. And so that's why they feel good and you understand it. But yeah, he's been, I'm happy for him. And like even, we could even get into some of those other guys, but just to see, I don't know. Like like you said, because you can't string hits together. Like if it's on the ground, like, okay, so take your singles. And that's what he did during that 50 and 2/3. It was, uh, teams were 0 for 20 something with runners in scoring position. Like there was traffic. It's not like he was just, it was rare to get guys. Like guys were in scoring position at times because he will give up a single or, a guy, which is what ended up beating him is like you get around the changeup enough and pull it down the line, you even get a double. But because he combines it with so much swing and miss, it's like when he punches out two guys and you're good luck stringing 2 to 3 singles together. And even if we're not talking, trying to keep zeros on the board, like that's why it can be, the ERAs and the ones, because it's like, yeah, you might be able to do it for one inning. You might get a run or two home. But over the course of 7 innings, you're going to only have 1 or 2 runs. So you better hope your guy is going out there and shutting down their lineup, or else, he's going to win every time he goes out there.
Not to overanalyze scoreless streaks, but I don't think 4-seam vert guys are ever going to go on a scoreless streak.
No,
like
you get popped for a homer.
Yep. And like you could go 7 straight starts with 1 earned run, and it'd be like, this guy's the best pitcher in baseball. He's throwing 7 every time he goes out there, and he's only giving up 1 earned, and he's, winning pitcher of the month. Those guys, it's just very hard to go on a scoreless streak just because it takes 1 swing of the bat, whereas 1 swing of the bat even hit hard against Cristopher Sanchez, 5 swings of the bat, 10 swings of the bat, however many over that stretch, were just more than likely beaten to the ground, and the worst case scenario is double down the line.
Without question. Also, he went 50 and 2/3 and was like one of the best months I've ever witnessed from a pitcher. He was a whole game away from breaking the record. Earl Hershiser's 59 and 2/3. Like, I don't care what era it was, what offenses looked like, what the strike zone looked like. 59 and 2/3 is absolutely insane. That is just an absolutely bonkers record. That's one of those baseball records that's like, I don't know if we're ever going to see anybody break that.
No, I don't anticipate it, and I'm definitely not holding my breath expecting it. So a couple other things that we wanted to talk about at the quarterway point is some of these rookies that have come up, and obviously it was a hot button topic early in the season when you had Kevin McGonigal, who seemed like one of the best players in the sport. We've now seen 2024 number 1 overall pick Travis Bazzana come up and be a really big linchpin in the Guardians lineup at the top of the order, providing them some, good depth and lengthening that lineup. There's a ton of other guys out there. So Dan, what are you kind of seeing with a lot of the young hitters that stands out to you as maybe why this crop of, let's say, first or second year players, will throw in the guys that debuted last year, are potentially just different?
Man, well, first off, the Guardians have 2 of them, and it's just like, of course they do.
They have a lot of them.
Yeah, but like, Bazzana and DeLauder, like those 2 guys, and what they're able to do that offense to give Jose Ramirez some help, and they're going to only get better, you would think, just based off of what their debut, what they've done so far early. I know DeLauder made his debut in the playoffs, but like he didn't play at all in the big leagues last year, so this is truly his rookie year. I think it's funny because it's like it feels to me more and more that guys come up more ready for big league baseball offensively. Pitchers, it feels kind of similar. Like if you have the dominant stuff, like you flip the coin almost, right? Like it's like some of them, they come up, it's everything you expect. Some of them take some time going into like understanding how to work through a big league lineup, things like that. But offensively, for the most part, especially these guys who are top prospects, like, 'cause I even think like Cole Emerson's come up and looked the part in Seattle, and like we could go on and on. JJ Weatherholt, and I'm not saying they're all of them look like superstars or they're hitting well in the 300, whatever. Did they all come up and like they look like they fit as everyday players? They come in, they work at bats. And I think that's where we're going with this, is like they know how to control the strike zone, and I definitely think it helps that the strike zone is the same now, no matter where you go. Where I think like an interesting thing to think about this is like, well, back in the day when you debuted, the guy who's been in the clubhouse for 5 years knows every single umpire and kind of knows his tendencies, and you have to learn all them because you've never had those guys ump your games as a young guy. And now it's like, no, the strike zone is the strike zone, no matter what. And so I think that helps him, but I think it's kind of a credit to and kind of how we see, how we're training offensive guys, how guys are coming up, how we have so much, so many resources, so much tech, so much information to give these guys in the training setting that as they're being built, they are understanding now how to control the strike zone from an earlier age. So when they get to the big leagues, they can do it against the highest level pitching, and it's incredibly impressive. I also think it's kind of a little bit of like them. I think because of, I mean, you still have to make adjustments, so I don't want to say like they're finished products, but they're closer to a finished product because they have a more of an understanding of what they do well, because they get so much feedback and there's so many resources to help them with that. They know what areas of the strike zone they can attack. They know, how their swing plays, what it plays against, and they're just better equipped for making their debut when they get to the big leagues, being able to be a productive player in their lineup because they know more of who they are as well. And again, I'm not saying they're coming up and they're finished products and that's who these guys are. There's adjustments. They're going to go through slumps. They're going to do all the things that everyone goes through. But I just think when they get there, there's less finding themselves than maybe in the past because we have so many implements now to help them develop at a quicker rate as they come up through systems.
Yeah, it's fascinating because offense is arguably, at least depending on who you ask, the worst it's ever been in terms of on field production.
Counting
We're
stats.
looking at
Yeah.
counting stats, averages across the league. And I believe like 237 right now is league average, batting average, right? So like that makes a lot of probably people sick to their stomach. But I think the point you're saying and what makes it fascinating is there's also a very valid argument that offensive development is the best it's ever been. And it's showcasing in these younger hitters, right? We're now 16 plus years into the new age revolution of hitting that has really caused some divide, right? I would say it probably started popping up with Marlon Byrd in 2012 with the Pirates, somewhere in that time frame, where we started to kind of hear of the DeLauders, like, hey man, why don't you hit the ball on the ground? Wow, that's a crazy or off the ground. Oh, that's a crazy concept. Yeah, let me think about that. And so we've been in this kind of new horizon for a really long time, and we've had ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys, and I think we've gotten to the point where over the last few years, and this is from a draft perspective, where I've seen this in college baseball, is these hitters just have such a good understanding of the strike zone, right? The ability to make contact, to make loud contact when they do in fact make contact. And you're starting to see professional organizations value that, right? Value those skill sets in buckets, right? I texted you about this. I've texted other people about this. It's like drafting and player evaluation, right? Over the last couple years, I've had just this surface level first analysis when I'm picking guys I like versus don't like. Do they make contact? Do they swing at pitches in the strike zone at an elite rate? And do they hit the ball hard enough? If they can reach those benchmarks in college baseball, I like them. And I'll tell you, in 2024, the players that check that box are all in the big leagues except for Charlie Condon.
Right.
Right? Like that is how simple to an extent, but it's not simple, but that is shown what's player development last year, and he's one of the best prospects, he's a corner infielder, but Andrew Fisher was the guy that stood out and he fell to the 20s. This year, there's a ton of guys in the draft that kind of check those three boxes and are starting to look like, so it really shows how player development and specifically offensive development has changed in terms of prioritizing. It's not just about launching the ball and how far and high can you hit it, and we don't care about strikeouts. No, because those guys are what we would call higher variance outcome players. And if you draft that guy in the first round, you may have and I don't know a player off the top of my head that comes to mind. I mean, Nick Kurtz has some swing and miss or a decent amount of swing and miss in his game, but he's safe because he is the elite of the elite, the Juan Soto level swinging at strikes, right? So like those are, which we can get into a conversation about that and how to evaluate if one isn't up to standard. But what you're starting to see is just, again, we go back to that barrier of entry, right? What teams are valuing is that barrier of entry. And if we can see these three marks, you're making enough contact, you're swinging primarily at strikes, you're not just swinging at everything, which can work in college baseball or high school baseball, and you're just showing enough of exit velocity to showcase that wood bat's not going to be knocked out of your hand. You're not hitting with a pool noodle. You're going to be a pretty good player, at least in terms of development. And if we can get any strength out of you, you're going to be better. Like, I think teams are now at the point where they would rather add strength and know that the player has that foundation than they are to take strength and hope that the player makes more contact.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Kurtz, because I think Kurtz's superpower is it's not the fact that he can hit the ball, 900 feet, because he's a massive human being, but it's the fact that he swings at strikes, and he has, like you said, just like an elite knowledge of the zone and an elite ability to, when he does pull the trigger, it's when the ball's over the plate, and it makes those guys. It's a pitcher, you want to get guys off the plate if you can. And the guys who chase are the easiest guys to pitch to, even if they have ridiculous power, right? You'll take your chances, because so many things do have to go right to square it up to get it out of the ballpark. Because, but if I know that I can get you out of the zone and I can get you to expand, and there's swing and miss, then it makes you a little bit of an easier out. And I think the game's going more athletic. And I think that helps these guys, better hand-eye coordination, just like some of those attributes, and some of those fail safes where you said, like, if you make the contact, if you're not a huge swing and miss guy, we have ways to get you better now. We can produce power. We can produce a little more power. And to me, my ideal hitter are the guys who are good all around hitters. They know the strike zone. Like, look, we love chicks dig the long ball. We get that, and those guys are great. But to me, like, my preference of an ideal guy is like, know the strike zone, understand, how to control an at bat. Don't be flailing at pitches, understand how pitchers are going to work you. Get to the pitches you can get to, hit the ball hard, right? Like doubles, gaps. And yeah, when those guys that are athletic like that, like the Connor Griffins and JJ Weather, they'll leave the yard when you make the mistake. They're going to. Are they going to hit 40 homers? I don't know, but they're going to be extremely productive players, because they're not going to have a ton of swing and miss. They're not going to chase. They're going to hit the ball hard consistently. They're athletic, so even they'll find some more hits because of their foot speed, things like that. And that, to me, those are the guys that, like, let's raise the floor up a little bit. And even if the ceiling comes down just a little bit, if you have enough of those guys when you're building a lineup, you're going to be productive.
I'm going to contradict your athleticism point, but I do agree largely. I know we've talked about that, and because this person we're going to talk about in comparison to a Kurtz is largely regarded as one of the better athletes in terms of what he showed in college baseball. And I think what you're seeing, and this is the point why these evaluation metrics matter, is Jack Caglianone. And I've always said that there's a certain extent where you can out-athlete your competition. And I really genuinely think Jack Caglianone out-athleted college baseball in the SEC. He out-athleted A-ball. He out-athleted AA. And then he got his debut. And this crazy thing happens in professional baseball, because on the pitching side, we've talked about the barrier to entry, AAA pitching, the depth, AA pitching, the depth, and every level you go down, it's harder and harder to watch, right? Like, just because that barrier to entry is the biggest step up it's ever been from minor league baseball to professional baseball. Well, one of the concerns about Caglianone is he swung at everything. He made a ton of contact, but he swung at everything. And being a bad ball hitter and still hitting the ball hard in college baseball can work. It can work in AA.
It can work in the big leagues if you're truly special at it. We've seen it. It's just, it falls off quick.
It can work in the big leagues, but rarely for power hitters.
Sure.
Probably the point I would make there, right? Rarely do power hitters go through these consistent, right? And I'm talking about consistency. Like, look at Kurtz. When Kurtz shows up to the ballpark, he can go 0 for 4 with 1 walk, and he provides value. Guys like Caglianone, if they're not making contact, and specifically making contact where somebody isn't standing, they're a net negative to your team. Kurtz brings something to the ballpark, and they're very similar in terms of their power output. They both have a ton of power output, but it's just so funny to think that so many people were caught off guard that Caglianone fell to 6. How could all these guys go in front of him? How, blah, 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 and he was great in the minor leagues. And I had said some negative things through the draft process that, like, made me feel a little stupid. And Major League Baseball exposes those flaws of like, who would you rather have right now, Kurtz or Caglianone for the next 15 years?
Oh, yeah, not close.
It's not even close because Kurtz is a top 5 hitter in the game. Swing and miss be damned. And the thing about Caglianone is now he's searching. His chase rates have gone up in terms of improved, but his swing and miss has gone down. And so now he's swinging and missing at Kurtz's level. And he's also swinging at 33% of the pitches out of the strike zone. And he's still elite in average exit velocity, barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, because again, he's elite in bat speed. But what you see is he's never going to tap into the ceiling of what Kurtz has already provided in terms of value, even though they were both elite college players. And one was specifically like, this is why evaluation of data matters, why data matters in terms of your evaluation, not just statistical stat lines at a Power 4 conference, is because if you would have put these two players next to each other in college baseball, you would have taken Caglianone by a landslide. He hit like 400 with 35 as last year in college, right? While doing it as a pitcher. You would have taken it by a landslide. But the A's did a great job of being able to pull back the data on Kurtz and say, this is the more major league ready hitter. And I just think it's a really interesting conversation because Caglianone's going to have weeks, because you look at his last 100 plate appearances. I'm sure I can toggle over to, it only goes up to 100. Up, down, up, down. It's peaks and valleys. When you chase and you swing and miss, you're going to have a good week where you hit everything hard, and he has the exit velocity chops to hit everything hard. And then you're going to have 1 week where you're swinging at everything and you make no contact and you're the worst player in the lineup. Right? So when we talk about that barrier for entry, that's why a player, even as athletic, as talented, as strong, as unique as Caglianone is, it doesn't translate to a big league roster unless you fix up one of those, because that's the other part. It has to be, it's the How I Met Your Mother hot crazy scale, right? That's what I always say chase and contact are. You can chase if you make a ton of contact, Luis Arias. You can not make a ton of contact. You can swing and miss a ton if you don't chase, Nick Kurtz. You can't do both. You will never be a stable big leaguer if you do both. Never.
No, you get eaten alive. And that's what the problem we've seen with Dylan Cruz early in his career. He just got into where he was chasing a little more power. He was swinging and missing at everything, and he was swinging at everything, just point blank, whether he was missing or not at the time. He was swinging at everything, and they've tried to, it's hard. I think it's hard for those guys, especially at that, like you can't do it at the big league level, learn to chase less because it's too hard. And then you become unsure. So when you do swing at strikes, you're late. You're not on time, you're mishitting balls, and then it's like you can get, and that's kind of what we've seen with Cruz a little bit. To boil it down real simple, it's like because of how good pitchers have gotten, like it is imperative to me now. It's like those guys, Arias, like part of, and I think we agreed on this a little bit this week. We've been critical of him in the past because, like, I don't know how sustainable it is. I also don't think if you should be chasing what Luis Arias does. It's like saying you shouldn't try and be Aaron Judge. You can't be Aaron Judge because he's 6'7". He's unbelievable, but he can play like he's 6'4". He's unbelievable power. Luis Arias, that bat to ball is like once in a generation stuff. So if you're out there trying to learn how to hit or become a better hitter and you're trying to chase Luis Arias, like you can't do it. So like that's where I've been critical. Like, but those guys, like they're going to get fewer and fewer and far between because if you chase the way stuff's gotten so good, you're facing Jacob Mizrowski's 94-mile-an-hour slider. You can't. I don't care if you're a bad ball hitter. Like this is the stuff you're seeing every day.
There is no bad ball hitter. Like
Vlad Guerrero Sr. Like that guy who was the exception of all of it, where it's like bad ball hitter with power. Mm-hmm. Right? He'll hit it if it skips and he'll hit it out of the park. Like those guys, you just can't do it because of the stuff that pitchers have nowadays. So like to me, like as we continue, we're a couple years into this, but like if you continue to watch the draft and watch these prospects and see the guys that come up and make impacts earlier, I think they all are going to be guys who do damage in the zone and they lay off the pitches out of the zone for the most part, and they are in the better half of the league of guys who don't chase because you have to against the stuff today. Like if you're going to expand and like guys are good enough that they're getting swing and misses in the zone. We just did a whole thing on Cristopher Sanchez who can dot the bottom of the zone with a changeup, and guys are whiffing like they've never played the sport before. Mizrowski's the same thing. Like, E up, here's 104. So now if you're going to expand to help guys like that too, you don't have a chance.
Don't have a chance. Don't have, and again, I can't emphasize that enough because to me, right, and I do think that there's like I thought Kurtz was going to have better contact skills in professional baseball than he has. Like the whiff has actually surprised me because he showed so much quality contact over his years. I mean, he was around an 80% contact guy in college. It was a little below his last year, but he was dealing with an injury that I was surprised to see the strikeout rates and the swing and miss be what they've been. But I think what we've realized, and again, this is the evaluation, and I heard somebody talking about like how can you model changes through levels, right?
Yeah.
And very, very fascinated. I have a ton of ideas because I was on the phone yesterday when Georgia went to Matt Scott, and I would love to build a model that, you know, is able to pull how much arm angle makes an impact with your relievers, how much movement profile different east-west compared to north-south, we can low, high slot, like all those different things go into making these decisions. But all that's to say, like, I'm starting to realize that like contact rate, which is again, this is going to be common sense. Contact rate is the least sustainable of those skills in professional baseball. But we need to show a level of contact rate in college baseball against that competition and understand that there's going to be a gradual standard deviation of change with every level you go up. So I think what we're learning with Kurtz is because Cag showed the same thing. Caglianone was a great contact guy in college. Well, if his swing and miss went up, well, now it's swing and miss with chase concerns. Chase is sustainable at every level in terms of guys that are really good at it tend to be really good at it, right? Like that's not a skill that you lose. Whereas guys who are really good at making contact in the strike zone, out of the strike zone, doesn't really matter, really good at contact, are going to naturally see a decrease of that ability in Major League Baseball. And then exit velocity, because this is the other part of the conversation, is Steven Kwan. Like, again, there's 3 buckets, and I think it's average exit velocity, or if you want to call it EV90, whatever. You just have to not swing a pool noodle. Let's call it that, right? Like you just have to be able to make enough impact to find green grass. Those 2, chase and exit velocity, are up here, right? And then contact skills is like barrier for entry, get you in the door. And as long as you do the other 2 good enough, you're going to be successful, right? And so being able to check those boxes, because Kwan is 92nd percentile in chase rate, 100th percentile in whiff, and he stinks.
This year, in fairness.
This year, 100%. But like, again, like that's why we've been critical of Luis Arias, because he is a unicorn. Because it's the least sustainable hope is like that batted ball luck is just like a part of your skill set, right?
Didn't Jeff McNeil win a batting title?
Jeff McNeil won a batting title. Like those guys end up getting released, and that's where it's like, not to say like Luis Arias is one of those players that I think you do kind of have to watch to appreciate a little bit more, like in terms of like, he probably should have a job every year quicker than he typically does, and he should be able to sign a longer contract.
But I think what it is like it's hard to bet on once in a generation. Like it's a once in a generation skill. Also, I think that you and I agree that those guys who chase and are contact, crazy, that skill falls off, and it's not sustainable every year. So it's like, well, am I going to really bet on like at some point the batted ball luck's going to change? At some point he's going to get a little older, so maybe he can't get to some of those pitches. At some point, like, am I really going to bet that this like once in a generation contact percent? And he always finds a job and he's always productive with whatever team he's playing for. But like, it's hard to continue to bet on that when there's a little bit of a sure thing, because like if you look at Arias, like when Arias hits 280, what did he hit last year? 294, 280?
Yeah, 292.
Not as productive. Like, I'm sorry. No, like you have, because he's not walking. So it's like, so you're on base now. It's like you come back to the pack a lot. You're not impacting the baseball. You're not giving us slug. You're not giving us stolen bases.
Mm-mm.
You're not giving us good defense. You're an average, you're below average defender.
That's what people are saying is now he's been better.
Sure. But when we're talking off season, making these decisions, like it's hard to like say, okay, well, I can bet on a guy who like, okay, this guy hit 260, but his on base or 250, let's say 260, because we're talking about higher average guys when you're comparing him to Rise, like 260, but like, okay, he's a better glove and he's on base at 350. I probably take the bet there. Like it's
better glove, better on base. Again, on base and average. Like again, whether you want to say like, yes, there's a skill to average and evaluating a player, but
sure.
Like, on base percentage, it's more important, right? It's all about how often you get on base. And even this year, we're hitting 324. He only gets on base at 36% clip. And even guys like, who's a player that's hitting 230 with, a little bit
Kyle
more.
Schwarber. Let's just
Yeah,
say Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, and Kyle Schwarber, I guarantees what, 370, 380 on base percentage?
360.
360.
So
Like they're the same
same,
play. Yeah, they get
but
on
he's
base at
hitting
the same rate.
240 and also has
Yes,
23 homers to lead the major leagues.
exactly. And at the end of the day, right? Like this is data driven decision making, but everybody has KPIs, right? And KPIs are just key performance indicators. And at the end of the day, you are foolish, and you're fooling yourself and you're fooling your organization if you're going to invest capital and make an investment in a guy that doesn't strike any of the KPI buckets that majority of these and major league organizations have, right? Barrel percentage is the largest correlation to success, on-field success. He's first percentile in barrel percentage, right? Like they're just at the end of the day, and you can say, well, that's people that data nerds don't watch the game, whatever you want to say, and you are 100% accurate. But years and years and years of research tell us KPIs are the most important factor when making these decisions and evaluation. And we just talked about KPIs like contact percentage, chase percentage, average exit velocity for college prospects, and being able to bucket guys that way. It's no different in these off-season decisions that people are making. But again, it comes down to you have to do at least two of those three well. You have to either hit the ball hard enough and have one or two of either making a ton of contact and not chasing, or making not a ton of contact and having really good plate discipline. But even Stephen Kwan having really good plate discipline and not a lot of, and a ton of contact, but not a lot of average exit velocity, that isn't sustainable year over year in terms of like, we also have to remember that the thing that shifted in offseason decision making is what does next year look like?
Right.
We don't, like, so many times in professional sports in the 80s, we invested on what the player was. And like, we now know what players translate into next year more than we did in the past. And so that's what we're making decisions on isn't, oh, this guy hit this last year, let's go get him. No, it has a lot more to do with what that player is going to be, because that's what you're paying for at the end of the day.
How many times have we seen it too? Like at some point, like you let history, write the future. Like it's like, well, we have a zillion examples of guys cashing in and it never paying off.
Yeah, Johnny Damon, right? High contact guy, probably chasing his
game. I'm not even talking falling into this particular subset of players that have these. I'm just talking period. Ryan Howard.
Yeah.
And again, he had a torn Achilles, but like Ryan Howard carried the Phillies but now we're paying him late into his 30s. I mean, you go on and on and on. I would just Pablo Sandoval.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was a huge piece of that Giants team, but the Red Sox were paying him because of what he was. You're talking about a guy who wasn't the best athlete, or maybe he was because of the shape he was in, able to compete at that high level. But you get my point. Like, you're looking at the build, you're looking at his skill set, bad ball hitter, what he had done in the past, and you're paying him because he had been good, and it was a disaster.
It never works out. It never works out. And again, here's the opposite end of that. Why are people still not, like, I think major league orgs are conscious of who they give long-term contract. Why does Juan Soto get 15 years? Because you want to know what plays for 15 years.
400 on base percentage.
43 years old, still spitting on balls a freaking fraction of an inch out of the strike zone. He might not be hitting the ball hard, and he might not be making the contact he did at one point. But when you talk about long-term KPIs, the ability to swing at freaking strikes and not swing at balls. So you see orgs, Aaron Judge is the same way. We don't care. Your swing and miss is going to get worse with age anyway. Chase is the skill set that stays. And what you learn is average exit velocity, or let's just say overall power, goes down. But what these guys learn later in their career that make really good swing decisions is just when to pull the baseball, how 100%. To pull the baseball. That's what they rely on. Pull it in the air and backspin. Okay, when Judge is 39, he's still going to hit the ball really hard. But like maybe more of a Soto, when he starts to slow down physically, well, what he's going to be able to hold it on too long is like, okay, now I'm just going to go pull side jack and I only have to hit it 340 feet. Okay, yeah, I can do
Juan
that.
Soto strikes me as the guy who, like, towards the back end of that contract in his career, he's on base at 400, hits like 12 homers, but hits like 330 still. Because he's like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't do that anymore, so I'm just gonna start
Hmm.
flicking balls to. I'm gonna get strikes on the outer half and like flick it over the shortstop. So, like, he will be a Luis Arias at 38.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
oh,
it's the other thing is the Joey Votto conversation. I mean, he said it when he
mm-hmm,
retired. He
mm-hmm,
thought he could have gotten to more power once he learned what
mm-hmm.
that meant to him. And it was such a fascinating thing is to hear like a third. I mean, if anybody's listening to this point, go find Joey Votto's interview on Starkville,
Starkville,
which comes out on
outstanding.
Saturdays with the Athletic. And then he was also on MLB Now, which a lot of people caught a clip on of him saying how he built a model to predict umpire tendency, pitcher tendencies, and things like that in 2015. And had it not been for injuries, Joey's pretty convinced that he would have still been racking up like 30 homer seasons because he
Today.
had
Yeah.
he had finally learned that skill of when to use it, and he knew himself so well. And I think that's what you're seeing. Like Joey Votto is a guy like I would give Joey Votto if Joey Votto trained for off season and was like I
And I'm
would go give him a
healthy.
contract.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
if we could prove that he was healthy, like that's a skill set that's going to walk into your roster. He might hit 220, but he'll OBP at 350 in your 7 slot, and he'd probably poke 22 to 25.
He also seems like he'd be we got to wrap up, but he also seems like he'd be the best clubhouse guy.
Oh my god.
So like, yeah, just bring him in for that. It's like kind of like the Andrew McCutcheon,
Yeah.
which like I'm surprised he got DFA, but it's like I don't like. There's another example, by the way. Like, what was Andrew McCutcheon get on base?
Still getting on
So he
base.
kept getting jobs, and it's like
Yeah.
also like add in the fact that like maybe the best person in the league. So like you just like one of the best teammates in the league, so you just keep him on the roster.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you mentioned it there. We got to wrap up. If we didn't spend 40 minutes talking about Steve Sabins, maybe we would have been able to fit in the
He deserves
conversation
it.
into the time frame that we wanted. But Dan, appreciate it today. Obviously, really fun conversation getting to talk about kind of what the differences is in player evaluation. And obviously, we didn't even get into the player development side of how people are getting to that point. But I think just kind of highlighting that it's very intentional how people are developing these hitters at a young age. And, it's showcasing in how ready these guys are in professional baseball and then being able to obviously pivot into how we value these players in terms of their long-term value and also in the draft and player evaluation from that stance. So really fun conversation. If you're still listening at this point, make sure you smash the subscribe button. Obviously, we haven't been cooking with as much content as we like. Both Dan and I are busy. We're going to get into a routine here eventually, making sure we're providing content consistently through the platforms all the time. But that'll do for this episode of the Baseball Development Hub podcast.